Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics, our Christmas Eve edition, right before the primary season. We're with a guy in the middle of one of the biggest primaries in the state, Representative Dick Schroer, running for Senate in St. Charles County. Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So tell me how the race is going.
I think it's going great. Talking to many voters, talking to a lot of people that are frustrated with many issues not being addressed, like the tax cuts, like issues with education reform. And I think that me being in the Senate, getting there, working with the different groups, having a true leader, working, mediating all these issues, I think we're going to please the people of St. Charles County.
At least it hasn't been cold, right?
No, it's not been cold. It's been monsoon weather. We've had 100-degree plus weather. Yep. But that's, got us back in fighting shape.
Nice. So let's talk about your time in the legislature. You were a very active legislator.
Amen.
I always thought you were a guy that could do a little bit of both. Give me the accomplishment that you're most proud of.
I'd probably say 2019 was the Missouri Stands for the Unborn Act, working with Elijah Haar, the speaker at the time, Mary Elizabeth Coleman, Adam Schnelting. I sponsored House Bill 126, which led to Missouri being the first state in the nation to outlaw elective abortions.
So you have the abortion, social issue stuff. I've also watched you carry some things that mattered. Like you were a big part of keeping that Wentzville plant, automotive plant, in Wentzville. And a lot of your constituents, especially if you run for Senate, they might not ever know it, but they probably still have a job today. And they're buying school clothes right now because you helped keep that plant there.
Yeah, being the chairman of the Small Business Committee, putting the job creators first and trying to remove some of those hurdles that job creators have to go through, that's one of my priorities. But seeing that GM was going to leave, I worked with the governor's office, came together with the conservatives, with the Democrats, Republicans, all together. We passed a reform that led to $1.5 billion investment in that community, and now it's thriving. And
your community, too.
Correct.
And that's your county. So let's talk about the Missouri Right to Life. They came out and endorsed you singularly. I assume it had a lot to do with that, the bill you passed.
Right.
I mean, it was an interesting place where you got to apply some of your legal training in with statutory legislating. Talk about Missouri Right to Life. It's got to be, I've always felt like the biggest endorsement in Republican politics is Missouri Right to Life.
Well, it's one that I'm probably one of the most proud of, that and the police right now. The only candidate that's been endorsed by Missouri Right to Life. I know there's some other groups out there that are claiming that they exist, but Missouri Right to Life has been something I've been involved in since a very young age. The president, Steve Rupp, is somebody that I went to church with in North County. He saw me growing up in the church as an usher, cleaning the church, the Holy Name Society. And I told him back in 2016, I said, we are going to attack this issue. We are going to preserve life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness of all, from womb to tomb. And in 2019, that's what we did. And I think, with my bills to defund Planned Parenthood, to protect our taxpayer dollars, to ensure that if the Hyde Amendment is ever repealed, that we're never going to subsidize abortion in the state of Missouri. I think for those reasons that I've gone to the front line to stand for the unborn, to stand for life at all levels, is why I'm the only candidate endorsed herein.
Let's talk about, you mentioned cops.
Yeah.
St. Charles County loves the cops, right?
Absolutely.
You've been endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police. That, I tell you, I've watched you carry bills for them, go to bat for them. That is maybe not a police union. It's something that might seem a little odd, but you went above and beyond for the cops. Tell me about your relationship with the police in St. Charles County and in the state.
Well, growing up in Ferguson, Missouri, I saw what crime could do to a community. The community was rebuilding after I moved out, and we saw what the hands up, don't shoot fallacy did. And, the media pounding on the lies of hands up, don't shoot during Ferguson. But seeing that crime is spreading right now, we have career politician, so to speak, in Kim Gardner, who's refusing to uphold her oath of office and prosecute these violent criminals. We need to ensure that all of those criminals that are coming over into St. Charles County now are being stopped at the very starting point. And 42% of the arrests last year in St. Charles City were attributed to those that came over from St. Louis. That we could put an end to that if she would actually uphold her oath and prosecute these violent criminals. Going into the Senate, we are going to have to address this. If she's not going to prosecute these violent habitual criminals, the state's going to have to step in.
Your own prosecutor, Tim Walmart, has raised concerns about how you do that. How do you keep the state, let's say your colleague Crystal Quaid becomes governor in 2 years. How do you keep her from saying, you know what, we're going to take the state into St. Charles County now?
Well, I think, when you look at certain aspects that myself and Senator Onder tried to pass a couple years ago in the special session, worked with the governor, he expanded the call because he saw what crime was doing to communities. We have to rebuild St. Louis if we're ever going to move forward in comparing ourselves to other states. But I think what we're going to have to do is just look at the laws that are on the books, structure a bill in a way like we did only involving murders.
I think everybody agrees with the problem you're talking about. I don't think there's anybody that can honestly look at the situation and say, right now, if you commit murder in the city of St. Louis, you're more likely to get away with it than to be caught. and to actually be convicted and go to jail or the electric chair or whatever.
Right.
But what if Attorney General Peter Merritt decides there's laws in St. Charles County, but using the same law, he wants to come in and take over? I think there was folks that raised concerns of not that there's not a problem, but what if it ever gets put back on us?
Well, I think that's, in structuring a bill like that, you have to take all that into account. And that's something that we looked at back in 2019 when we had the heartbeat bill. Could this be used to go after gun owners? And that's why we have to look at the language, read these bills. That's something that a lot of legislators don't do, is just go through and look at both cases. If we do have a Kim Gardner as the Attorney General, we don't want her going after legal gun owners like she did with McCloskey. So I think that's a very important point, and I think we nipped that back in 2020 in the special session.
It's where being a lawyer comes in and helps, because I mean that's a fine line you have to ride there of how to fix a problem in St. Louis. But I mean, the one thing we know is the world will change. At some point, there'll be a Democrat Attorney General. Will he use that law to come and maybe find Berry County or Christian County? That's the interesting part. Let's talk about guns, though. You mentioned guns.
Yeah.
St. Charles County is an interesting county to me. A lot of folks grew up like you did in North County and have moved over. A lot of those around St. Charles, well, they're not as Republican as the other parts of St. Charles County. In your home county, I've seen Moms Demand have a very active chapter in St. Charles. There is an evolution of guns. How do you make that case of keeping the Second Amendment safe, but not maybe alienating some of those new folks who don't have the same fervor for guns as everyone else?
Well, I think conservatives need to stop being conservative with the use of their voice. They need to use their voice and express their concerns with the red flag laws. I think that's unconstitutional. I think it violates due process, and I think there's a way we can address the concerns. But I think conservatives need to stand up and say, look, the Second Amendment, looking at Federalist 46, was not about hunting, was not about sport. It was to allow the people to protect themselves from a tyrannical government. And I think with all of the news focusing on these gun issues, what do they have in common? Most of them are in Democrat-controlled states where the gun control laws are very strict. So I think we have to have a discussion. It's going to continue to come up, but in St. Charles County, to your point, many of us moved to get safer communities, better schools. Now that's coming in jeopardy. And I think now more than ever, you have Republicans and Democrats in St. Charles County, not all, but many of them want their Second Amendment rights because they're seeing what is happening with crime coming into our communities. They want to keep themselves safe and their families safe.
Schroer Jones, someone I have a very high regard for, a very effective mayor. She would tell you these problems are connected. If you're going to give us special laws for our prosecutor's office, give us a special law so we can have gun control. How do you argue with the logic of if St. Louis is special, she wants gun control? Well, is that something you can do or not?
I just think gun control doesn't work. I think when you look at how it's been applied in other states, other nations, it is not working. What does work is actually going after these criminals, using the laws that are on the book to prosecute these individuals in the city of St. Louis, these habitual criminals. And we've actually increased the criminal penalties, myself and Senator Luetkemeyer, just a couple years ago. Somebody shouldn't have a gun to begin with, and they go and commit a violent crime with a gun, that's going to enhance that criminal penalty. If Kim Gardner and the other attorneys in Missouri and across the nation would just abide by their oath of office and prosecute these individuals that shouldn't have guns to begin with, I think that will resolve a lot of the issues.
Let's talk about maybe the biggest issue in the state Senate right now is that there's a lot of acrimony. You are someone who's been very talented on radio, on the internet. You have a knack for raising the ire of someone that may disagree with you. I've heard you personally talk about how you want to go to the Senate and find a way to get along, lower some of that steam. How does someone like yourself, who's very verbose, who has a reputation for being a bit of a bomb thrower, go to the Senate and make things more collegial, more senatorial?
Well, I think the number one thing we need to do is communicate. And one of my good friends, Barbara Washington from Kansas City, Democrat, she sat right next to me for several years. We disagreed on many issues when it came to policy, but we're both attorneys and we both communicated. And I think with the respect and telling people where you are in a certain issue, communication goes a long way. And I think, yes, I am the most conservative when it comes to my voting record. CPAC has me rated as the top conservative in the Missouri House. Going into the Senate, everybody knows that. Going into the Senate, everybody knows that I'm pro-life, pro-gun.
But I don't think anybody in the Senate cares how you vote.
Exactly.
It's about maybe your temperament as a senator.
Well, I think being able to mediate some of these issues. As an attorney, I have that experience to go in there, bring the groups together so we can actually focus on the conservative issues and not the infighting and not any type of issues that somebody may have because somebody voted bad on a bill. We need true leadership, and I'm not saying leaders in general in the Senate. I'm saying everybody needs to stand up for their community and start representing and advocating for their districts. And I think communication is key. I think being able to mediate these issues to allow us to focus back on what really matters, and that's what the people want.
Hey, Schroer, good luck Tuesday. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll be right back. Jeff Rainford, the bare knuckle brawler from St. Louis, is going to join us.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
Your energy needs are changing. That's why at Ameren, Missouri, we're not waiting on the future. We're building it with the Smart Energy Plan, advancing thousands of projects across the state, helping reduce emissions through cleaner energy sources, boost reliability with self-healing equipment, and better withstand storms with new composite poles. Moving Missouri forward and bringing us all a little closer together. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
I'm Steve Roberts, and I'm running for Congress against Cori Bush. Our country is spinning out of control. High gas prices, row, and children murdered in their schools. Now is the time to stand with President Biden, and I'll have his back, both in service and in Congress. I won't vote against the president just because I don't get everything I want. And together, we'll pass common sense gun laws and work to reform the police, not to fund them. I'm Steve Roberts, and I approve this message.
I'm Eric Schmidt. As a sixth-generation Missourian, it's always been about God, family, country, and the Cardinals for me. As your senator, I'll swing a big stick in Washington, crushing Biden's socialist agenda, stopping election fraud and protecting the integrity of your vote, securing our border, banning critical race theory, and keeping men out of girls' sports. I'm Eric Schmidt. I approve this message because I'll knock it out of the park for Missouri.
We thought it was over.
Missouri Republican Governor Eric Greitens has just resigned this afternoon.
Scandal after scandal.
Already facing a felony charge, now accused of a second felony.
Now there's more about Eric Greitens.
Former Missouri governor is now accused of spousal abuse and intimidation.
One of the boys had a swollen face, saying his father had hit him.
Scandals, felony charges, physical abuse allegations. That's not conservative. But it is the real Eric Greitens. Show Me Values PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Opinion Maker panel, my favorite one of the year. We get to tape these and see who's right or wrong on our predictions. David Barklage, the Dean of the Missouri Republican Party, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Chris Arps, News Talk STL, Newsmax, all kinds of news, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you
for being back. Jeff Rainford, the man in St. Louis. I hear people all the time like, oh, I got this thing in St. Louis. It's so confusing. I'm like, just go see Rainford. I mean, he can navigate this wilderness for you just fine. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be back.
Dennis Gannon, the county executive of Jefferson County. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. You got a big race coming up in 2 days, right?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I have a big race.
Tell me how it's going.
Well, we're fully engaged right now. We've executed our plan. We're just sitting back and making sure that we don't do anything bonehead between now and the end of the week.
Well, it's got to feel good though. Is there anybody from the Crystal Tavern to Governor Dunklin's grave to the Schnooks in Arnold that doesn't know the Gannon name?
Well, you know, that's probably very accurate, but you also forgot Southern Jefferson County too, which is where I come from. So it's a little bit more stronger down there.
Hillsborough, DeSoto.
But, you know, I guess Jefferson County Gannon name has been around for a long time. We've been in business there for, actually since about 1912. My grandfather had a meat shop in DeSoto, Missouri on Main Street, 1912. And so it's been around a long time.
Feel good about Tuesday?
I feel comfortable, cautiously optimistic.
Too close to call over here.
David Barklage, let's talk the U.S. Senate race. You've been pretty active. I think maybe your opinion might be as well known as mine about one of the candidates. Tell me where the race is, though. Just put your observer hat on.
Well, I think you had several really good candidates running. Vicki Hartzler, Eric Schmidt, Billy Long, several people that I think were all worthy competitors. But obviously the story is Eric Greitens, and to that extent, we've watched Greitens tumble into barely third place. I saw some polling this morning that showed him even in a worse position. I don't know if he'll hit double. I don't even know if he's going to hit double digits at this point. He may end up in single digits. We saw last week very clearly a move by the field to deny him any kind of Trump endorsement by both Vicky and Eric Schmidt coming out against McConnell for leadership. It was a very muted but direct, response on that. And so, to that regard, I think that took that endorsement off the table and potentially puts it in the pocket of one of those two, which is more likely Eric Schmidt. So, with all those things said, I think it's clearly at this point Schmidt has got the momentum, and that Greitens has got the momentum in the exact opposite direction. So, the real call today is Greitens is out. And Schmidt is likely in.
So, Chris, we talked about this. I always want to tell folks, we taped this show on Friday morning. A lot of things can happen in politics between Sunday morning and Friday morning. We talked yesterday on your radio show about how I don't know that it was, I heard Kimberly Guilfoyle on Pete Mundo.
Yeah.
And she was definitely talking about other people in Trump's orbit, not Trump, how that, very standoffish about it. Then they saw Schmidt come out and say, okay, I would rather have Cruz as leader. I think those dots could be connected.
Yeah, I think, we've seen 3 polls this last week that show that Eric Schmidt has momentum in this race. I remember when this race first started and Eric Greitens was ahead and people were saying that this may be a resurgence for his comeback. I always felt that it was name recognition at most, and that if he still had a lead and was doing well after the contrast ads, quote unquote negative ads came out, then he could be viable. But we've seen the negative ads have came out, and since then they were good, and he has dropped since those ads have been aired.
Yeah, I saw a poll in Jefferson County that showed Eric Schmidt topping 40% in Jefferson County. Had Greitens down pretty far down, I think third, maybe tied for third. Where's that race at in Jefferson County?
I've said all along that it's been hard for me to figure the race out. I know that Eric seems to be leading the pack, but it's been really hard for me to get a good measure on it. Many of them are good friends. I've known them, some of the leaders that we're talking about today. So it's been hard for me to kind of separate the friendship versus what I'd like to see happen. And I think that he would be a great, great senator.
And the first guest on this show ever was Eric Schmidt. So I get you, but you see enough data. Jeff Rainford, put your hat on here. Analyze this Republican primary as if you were, is there somebody who's coming to you from out of state? I tell you, I think Eric Schmidt has the momentum. I think these races have been breaking late and hard. You would have to think by all accounts he's the front runner at this point. But I saw a poll where it showed some support for Congresswoman Hartzler's moved up, mostly coming from other candidates that didn't have as much. Billy Long lost a chunk. That undecided is still at 15. My assumption is there's some folks that don't want to tell someone on the phone, I'm a sicko, I'm for Greitens.
Yeah, I remember where we were 6 weeks ago when everybody was saying that this was Greitens to lose. They're ready to coronate him, and the thinking was the harder you pushed against him, the more he was going to say, "Oh, that's the establishment. Rhino's coming after me," and that it wouldn't work. But it turns out that it is working, and that he's fallen. All the trends are really negative for him. And so, listen, sitting here today, if I had to put money on it, I would, 6 weeks ago, I would put money on Greitens. Today, I'd put it on Schmidt. I think he has fallen hard. The momentum is against him. As David said, does not look like he's going to get the one lifesaver he needed, which was President Trump's endorsement. So, we'll see on Tuesday, but, it's trending hard against him.
Chris Arps, will Democrats actually cross over and vote for Eric Greitens to try to help themselves in the fall?
That's what I'm very curious about. I mean, we've seen Democrats nationwide play in a couple of races to try to choose their candidate. I think Trudy Bush Valentine's probably going to win that primary. I think Cori Bush is probably going to win the Democratic primary for House. So why not go ahead and play in the Republican politics and try to elect Eric Greitens?
David Barklage, of that 15%, I mean, some of those folks, they might be for hitting women and children. They just don't want to tell anyone. So they're for Greitens, and they just want to keep it quiet. I think some of those folks won't even vote, but of the folks that do show up and aren't weirdos, a lot of them vote for Hartzler, right?
Yeah, I think so. And look, don't count Billy Long out. I'll give Billy Long a plug because he has put his heart and soul in this, and whether he wins or loses, I think Billy Long still has many chapters to write. With that being said, one of the things we noticed last cycle was you would think that the Trump vote is undercounted in these primaries. But that actually, it doesn't show up that way. If you remember last cycle, a lot of the centrist candidates ended up surging late. And so I would suspect after all these ads of hunting rhinos that people that see themselves as not part of that alt Tea Party may be the ones actually laying low, and those might actually not be the Eric Greitens votes. They may be exactly what you said, Vicky Hartzler or Eric Schmidt votes.
Jeff Rainford, I interviewed Trudy Bush this week. I thought she was very nice, very welcoming, until I asked her about abortion. Then, I tell you what, there was a whole different look in her eye. This hillbilly started backing his chair up a hair. Tell me about that primary. What's going to happen?
Well, I mean, Trudy Bush is going to win. I mean, she's put a lot of her own money into it. I think her ads are effective. I think after the Supreme Court decision on abortion, most Missouri voters are going to not know what her position is, what the nuances are. Same with Lance or anybody else's. They're going to know, hey, in the middle of all these, blow torches and let's go rhino hunting, we have a woman saying, hey, we have no nurses in the U.S. Senate. I think her ads have been very effective. I think, there have been no debates. I think very few Missouri Democrats will have met either candidate or could tell you what either candidate
Coons ran a good race.
What's that?
Coons ran a good race.
He's run. You know what? I was thinking about this 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when there was a different Democratic Party. That guy could have been somebody. He could have been, somebody who could have been a national figure in Missouri. But in this day and age, especially after the Supreme Court decision on abortion, it's just not. I don't see it in the cards for him.
Prediction time. Who wins that Republican nomination? Who wins the Democrat nomination?
I think it's Eric Schmidt, and I think it is Lucas Kuntz.
Who wins?
Eric Schmidt, Trudy Bush Valentine.
Who wins?
Schmidt, Valentine.
I think also Schmidt and Valentine.
I think Schmidt, I'm going to disagree. I think Schmidt and Bush. I think that's who wins. David, let's talk about these Republican congressional primaries. Down in the 7th, Jay Wasson, somebody you're very close friends with, and Eric Burleson. I always thought Mike Moon might pick enough votes out. Burleson's running a very strong race. It really feels like, and those things are it's very hard to predict that. Who's going to win?
I think that the fact that Moon is so underperformed, that has made Burleson a contender, but I think the race has come down to who's going to decide. Is it going to be the millions that were poured in by Washington interests to have actually put us in the position, our country in the position it is, or is it going to be the local guy who grew up on a farm, who raised a business, and I think to that regard I give the nod to Jay Wasson.
Interesting. Just Gannon, tell me, you've got a couple primaries in your neck of the woods. There's one in the St. Louis media market though. It's the Cori Bush, Steve Roberts. It'd be interesting to see where the city goes and what that means for Jeff County. Tell folks how the city affects Jeff County.
One of the things I think that we always look at and we always talk about is crime and how it's related to Jefferson County and how it bleeds across. The idea that the Merrimack River used to be a border does not exist anymore. And as St. Louis region does well, we as a region, Jefferson County, will do well. We cannot neglect the fact that we have issues in St. Louis with crime, and that is a key factor. Now, I have met Senator Roberts on a few occasions. I find him to be a fine guy, seems really sharp. I have not met Congresswoman Bush yet, so I don't really know how to compare as far as other than what I see on television, but I think that he's a fine gentleman. I know that we have to work together in the region. There's things that we have to make sure that we don't defund law enforcement to make them ineffective. So there's just a lot of things that need to happen in the region, and I think that's why what is important about trying to collaborate with people like the mayor and the county executives, as well as the congressional leaders, because ultimately that's exactly right, and they set the tone and the trend of what's happening in the life of that region.
Jeff Rainford, who's going to win that race?
It'll be the incumbent Cori Bush. That does not mean that I think that her star will rise forever. I think Steve would make a better member of Congress. I'm supporting him. I don't think it's his time. I will say this, if somebody from St. Louis County 2 years or 4 years from now runs against her, I think they have a really good chance.
Are you just saying Brian Williams without saying Brian Williams?
I'm saying Brian Williams without saying Brian Williams.
Chris Arps, tell me, this is your neck of the woods. Who wins?
I think Cori Bush wins the race. It's a clear contrast between Steve Roberts and Cori Bush. He is comes from a wealthy family, is educated. Cori Bush is kind of the exact opposite. I think the Democratic Party right now is more populist than the wing that Steve Roberts comes from. I think that also proves why Trudy Bush Valentine is so close to Lance Kuntz in the polls. I think she's only a couple of points ahead of him. I just don't. The Democrats right now are in a populist mode.
I've listened to you talk about Democrat politics as a Republican, and you've previously mentioned black women are a major force. Yeah. And it seems to me that they're not ready to give up on Cori Bush after one term.
No, they're not going to give up on Cori Bush at one term. But I tell you, with Tashara Jones, the mayor of St. Louis, endorsing Trudy Bush Valentine, I think that will add an interesting contrast to the race.
I got to say something. Black men are dead in Democrat politics right now. I believe that Cori Bush is very much a symbol of the wave, and I think she is far more talented. Her emergence on the national scene, whether you call it drama, theater, or whatever, or just pure, intelligence, she was able to immediately launch herself. I think her brand is a lot stronger than people give her credit for. I think she's been a lot more effective for the things she cares about than people want to give her credit for. It's always hard to see that kind of talent when you're this close.
But the only question is whether nationally, and I don't think I don't think we've reached the peak of the wave you're talking about, but I think I can see the peak coming. I mean, in San Francisco, a very progressive prosecutor got recalled. 3 school board members got recalled. Mayor of New York is a moderate. In the city of St. Louis, it's a race a lot of people aren't going to pay attention to, but for President of the Board of Aldermen, that's where I think we will see whether or not the city has reached the peak and whether or not you're going to start seeing a moderating influence.
I don't disagree.
I don't think it's going to be this race.
I would not discount her ability to sing more than one song.
Give me a prediction. Give me a prediction. 4th District, Rick Bratton, Mark Alford, Kalina Bruce, Taylor Burks, some of those folks you know. Yeah. Looks like it's come down to Alford and Bratton, right?
It does. And we've had Alford on our show, Tim Jones and Chris Arps show on News Talk STL. Good candidate. He's a former media person. Yep. Running a strong race.
What do you think? Who wins that?
Alford. I think the row factor is what bakes that in.
So let's talk about local. You got a primary in your neck of the woods.
Yes.
Tell me what folks are thinking about in the state Senate race.
State Senate race, I would say it, and which is very Jefferson County. Crime, inflation, not to defund the police, illegal immigration, protecting our borders, keeping Jefferson County safe, keeping the region safe.
Well, it used to be a bellwether for the state. Maybe it's a bellwether for the Republican Party. I think that's what people are talking about everywhere, right?
I agree. Those things have popped up everywhere. Add Parents' Bill of Rights, and you've got a full hand there.
David, with a minute left, who won the week?
I'm going to say friends. Mark and John Grimm, 2 very good friends of mine, just had their 60th birthday, and they are great fathers, husbands, sons, and most of all, great friends.
Who won the week?
I think it's obvious. Eric Schmidt won the week. 3-4 polls now have come out showing him with a widening lead.
I'm going to say 2 people, Sam Page, because I think he's going to win by a bigger margin than people think, and all of the people of Missouri, because it's starting to look like Eric Greitens is not going to be their U.S. Senator.
Won the week.
And I think Jefferson County, because God blessed us with good weather this week. We didn't get the rain that St. Louis had, and I don't know how you can have much better fortune than that.
Like it. We hope to see you next week to talk about what actually happened, see if these guys are right on This Week in Missouri Politics.
Support for this program has been provided by the Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, Ameren, Spire, and Sterling Bank.